right, who's ready for some block action? Because it's Snorlax time.
The Mimikyu has been whispered about for a long time. Players knew this new safeguard ability was strong, but the list hadn't quite been figured out yet. But when we have it set up against Comfey and Sableye, seems like it could be anybody's game.
If you like attacks, then turn off your screen. It's not going to happen on Andrew's side of the board. One energy featured, and it's only for that Crabominable V, which, I mean, that's a pretty cool attack, let's be honest.
Once we get to that late game, right, you set up Snorlax in the active with that block so your opponent cannot retreat, and you just wait for your opponent to draw through their deck, desperately looking for some sort of out, and then you finish them off. This is actually going to be Andrew's first time ever playing on stream. I didn't realize, so he still looks really happy. Like I said, looks pretty cool, and a lot of players, when they're playing their first time on stream, can get pretty nervous, and some players have a certain setup that they like to use, but when you're playing on stream, you have to be a bit more specific about putting your prizes off to the side.
Yep, we'll get to that point later on, and as we see Blake Wray on stream once more, we featured this player a few times before, and it's been playing for 7 years now. And, I mean, you're going to be surprised when you look on the other side and you see block Snorlax there. It is unfortunate when you're playing Lost Zone and you're so used to moving around your Comfeys, retreating left and right, but thankfully, you play a lot of switching effects, and that's not what Andrew wants to see.
And as we get into the prizes, one Colress, one Comfey, a couple energies. These are important cards, but as we know, Lost Box has so much resources that it's pretty easy for them to play around this, figure out what they're missing, and just stick to the game plan. Oh my god, Yakumo.
Yakumo, not
discard
really.
the special energies. You just starve your opponent of any means of attacking or putting down any damage, and just slowly but surely collect the victory.
Maybe that's for Mew VMAX, not right here. We see the rest of the prize cards, a few Arvin to go along with it. We're not going to see these cards, let's be honest.
Exactly. Andrew's not going to be taking any prizes. It's just a pure deck out victory is the full win condition. And when you talk about decks like this that want to keep your opponent from attacking, you're defending yourself. Your opponent, as the Lost Zone players, has Colress, Flower Selecting, just digging through the deck, desperately looking for, you have access to your entire deck, so you can go into the game with a game plan to say, it's only a matter of time before I get every single card I'll need to do the combo, but is it going to be strong enough to keep me in the game? And it looks like Blake's going to start things off with Comfey in the active, opening up with Battle VIP Pass, the classic, of course.
Obviously, favorite card to see in this situation, and when you do this opening search, so often you're going to be counting, oh, do I have the right energies? Do I have all of my Colress experience, whatever it may be? This time, I'm trying to count to 8. I want to see if I have 4 Escape Rope and 4 Switch Card, because they are going to be so pivotal in avoiding what likely is Snorlax on the other side of the board.
Yeah, Blake hopefully won't overextend into anything on the opening turn, just goes for the classic Greninja, second Comfey start. Andrew across the board has Rotom V in the active, has the instant charge ability. You just end your turn to draw 3 cards, and it's, you know, it's not Gorman dies, but we'll take what we can get.
It's interesting to see the Radiant Greninja lead into so early. Often this can be one of those Pokemon that you see targeted by an opponent. That's Moonlight Shuriken is a pretty costly attack, and you lose a lot of resources to get that rolling. And there is the Raikou and the Dragonite featured in the list, so early Dragonite that just continues to knock out Pokemon seems pretty good.
That's going to be Blake's condition for sure. Try to get an attacking Pokemon established, bring it into the active with the ropes, the switch cards, and just try to take prizes when you can. It's Blake's game to lose and Blake's game to win, surprisingly. But after 2 Flower Selectings, nothing too serious in the Lost Zone. Seems to be spent on resources. Has another Comfey. Is it worth extending to get another one into the active? Nope, just passes.
Yeah, I like this. We saw the Escape Rope already in hand, ready to go, but you don't want to use that just yet. You want to have access to, when you do play this card, you're at least taking 1 prize card, and then you can count those out as you're taking your knockouts. If you're using 1 switching effect per turn with a knockout, you're going to end up on top unless a card like Misfortune Sisters gets thrown into the mix and starts taking away your items.
And Andrew has the Nest Ball active, brings Snorlax to the front as the choice, and is going to take a moment to evaluate all the resources, all the dastardly tools and items and supporters in the deck that's going to try to throw as many wrenches as possible in Blake's way. Looking at the cross switchers, the crushing hammers, seeing how many Mimikyu are available, how many Snorlax. And again, everything is in order. Both these players, the prizes weren't too devastating, and that's what I always like to see, Kyle, is when we're going to have a nice even game.
Yep, access to all of the Misfortune Sisters is going to be nice here, as Andrew will try to reuse that card a few times. If you have access to the PAL pad, you can shuffle that back in, maybe even using a card like that Silene to bring this card back into the mix. And just end every turn drawing multiple cards with that Rotom V. You can really make a lot of great use out of that, and hopefully with the Snorlax in the active spot, you'll be able to block a little bit of this motion.
With the Snorlax in the active, it's going to be so important, of course. That's the main theme of the list. A control deck has been speculated about for a really long time, Kyle, right? I know players were kind of hungry to return to a disruptive control style, but the meta just never seemed right for it. There were some whispers of Radiant Alakazam or Klefki, and Andrew's 4-0 with this build. A lot of players certainly got caught off guard here in Sacramento.
Oh, we see the Misfortune Sisters starting things off, and it took the Switch Card and the Super Rod, which is pretty nice resources to take from your opponent.
Blake activates concealed cards, draws 2, then flower selecting.
Oh,
and
no!
Has to throw away a Switch Card, a really important piece you already talked about, Kyle. Another one, gets to keep the escape rope at the very least.
Yep.
It's certainly a saving grace that this Snorlax is not in the active. It just means that Blake can still attach and manually retreat, get some additional utility, get some cards in the Lost Zone. At the end of the day, again, we're looking for a big Dragonite to potentially be set up here soon with a Mirage Gate, slowly but surely moving towards Sableye to start throwing damage down. It's not, but Blake's not out of the woods yet.
Well, thankfully, he has the Colress Experiment. Can reach 7 in the Lost Zone now, but is that going to...
Okay.
Hopefully that was the order in which they all
Yeah,
fell.
they got knocked off the top there. But it should be fine.
Yeah, but certainly
He loses a Sableye.
looking for an attacker in this situation. If you have the Mirage Gate along with the Dragonite, you can take 2 quick prize cards here and feel pretty comfortable. It might just be the one because you have to use the escape rope. We've already seen 3 switch cards used. But if not, ultimately, Cramorant would be a fine Pokemon to get into the mix here.
Mm-hmm. Andrew can only prevent you from switching into the active. There's not a lot of ways to stop the Cramorant, etc.
There it is.
Yeah, it has the Dragonite V, the Sleepy Dragonite. I always love that promo, Kyle. Super hard to get your hands on these days, so Blake really swagging out here on stream.
Drip or drown, as we see not 1, but I believe 2 Mirage Gates available. Maybe even 3, who knows, but plenty to get the Dragonite V ready here.
Mm-hmm. Super Rod puts the energies back in. Blake is all ready to go with the Mirage Gate. Get those attachments now. And we just, again, use the escape rope, get the Comfy out of the active, and start taking prizes. This is the way, right? We saw it at the finale of the Peoria Regional Championships. If your opponent kind of has you in a lockdown position, sometimes all it takes is just having at least one Pokemon that can attack. Start trying to take some prizes every turn. Here's the double Mirage Gate now to get the final energy attached to Dragonite V. And then 1 to the active Comfey.
It's not the best because ultimately you're probably using a switching effect when you have Comfey just because of Snorlax in the block. So could maybe even hold on to it. And I do like this. It means that you have an opportunity with maybe to find a blank off of Misfortune Sisters now. It could be a Psychic Energy instead of one of those switch cards.
Oh, that's clever. All right, and it looks like the judges are just making sure that the Mirage Gate is resolving successfully. So it's rare, right? You only see 1 energy
You don't need it anymore. I think Blake's plan is use this Dragonite, knock out my own Comface.
Yeah, this Dragonite's going to wreak havoc on Blake's bench right now. Go get the knockout.
And for those counting at home, that is switching effect number 4 on turn 2.
Yep, and because of the escape rope, just a Dragon Gale for 1 prize, slowly but surely getting there. And this starts to put Andrew on a little bit of pressure. You don't want to have too many Pokemon in play at any given time, but because Dragonite is now established, he's pressured every turn to get another Pokemon to put on the bench just in case there's another knockout. The Rotom V is just going to sit there. The instant charge is great in the first couple turns of the game, but kind of gets worse and worse as time goes on because it just directly ends your turn. I guess it's better than nothing, right? You want to have Snorlax in the active, but whatever you put up is just going to be fodder for Dragonite at this point.
Yeah, this is terrifying to see. Usually you're trying to lock in a Pokemon in the active spot that isn't going to deal any damage, and your opponent is going to be having a hard time to find those switching effects. This is not the deck that you're looking to see. There's 8 ways to switch these Pokemon. There's a Pokemon that can knock out anything on your board other than the Mimikyu, and we don't see that right now. So here we go, Peonia. We know that you don't have any resources to help as far as basic Pokemon, as we just saw that with Hisuian Heavy Ball, but maybe there's another turn available here.
Yeah, try to get Mimikyu V into Mimikyu V, not that one. The other Mimikyu, the Safeguard, not taking any damage from Pokemon V. Try to shut down this Dragonite, and then Blake just pivots immediately into a Cramorant or something, or starts to work towards Sableye. It's very difficult.
Well, here's the play. Cross switcher, bring up this Radiant Greninja, and hopefully you're not dead. And we're done. There's the escape rope. It's pretty much how things roll here at this point. You play 8 ways to switch these Pokemon. There's number 5 on turn 3. That's a big way to close things out with a knockout.
Andrew wins this matchup if he can weather that early storm of resources, somehow prevent so many cards from being added to the hand, but it just doesn't seem possible versus Lost Zone. The Colress threw away another Colress because that's how many cards Blake saw. This has the escape rope, brings the Dragonite right back up into the active.
A longtime player, Grafton Roll, was playing the Snorlax deck in Peoria, just ran into not 1, not 2, but 5 Lost Zone decks in the opening day of competition. It did not go well for him, oddly enough.
Horrifying. I wonder what Andrew has played against so far to be 4-0 here. What sorts of lists are really getting exploited by Block Snorlax and Mimikyu?
Yeah, there's a few that you can run into and arguably feel pretty comfortable. You can lock up maybe a Flappy or something.
Versus Miraidon.
You can take a Manaphy in a Chin-Pow, and they're only dealing 20 damage to you over and over again with Rain Splash. There's a lot of different ways that you can put your opponent in awkward positions with this deck, and
double mulligan.
It's tough when they've got a lot of switching effects, I'll tell you that.
And who knows? We're going into game number 2. Blake maybe puts some switches into the prize cards. Maybe there's a really difficult flower selecting right at the open. And now that Blake kind of knows the matchup, he's going to be even more precious with those switch cards and those escape ropes. Instead of extending for early plays of expending those to just get more cards in the Lost Zone, you just sit and wait.
I'd argue that he already showed that. He had an escape rope on turn 1, and he held on to that instead of going for the 3rd flower selecting. He understood that it's likely that my opponent is able to bring up a Snorlax, lock that in the active, and I'm going to need all these switching effects. Didn't happen there. Andrew had to have the Rotom in the active the entire game, except for the 1 turn that Snorlax was brought up and knocked out. So I think he's got a good read on it. It's just how do you set up against this? Maybe if Andrew has a few more Pokemon, we can see a little further into the strategy.
But game number 2 is underway. Players setting up prizes. 1 escape rope, 1 Colress. Still pretty even prize cards. Still lining up to be a clean game. The active Pokemon for both players, though, spell a different story. Radiant Greninja, the Pokemon that you said, Kyle, is prone to get stranded in this matchup, now lined up against Snorlax.
Yep, that's not what you want. And that is going to be Energy Pass right there. Dragonite, of course, in the hand, along with some Colress Experiment, but you can't do much else other than just attach an energy. Hopefully your opponent does play down some more Pokemon so that you can make the most use of this Moonlight Shuriken. There's not much
charm
that
pass.
Andrew needs to do, though.
Yeah, because there is no Comfey, there's no turn 2 Dragonite threat from what Andrew can foresee. Colress Experiment's a great pickup here. A lot of Mirage Gates being offered. Has to keep a Comfey.
Yep, and we've talked about how you have to value those switching effects. The switch card there probably going to be more important resource than the Mirage Gate, and is going to hold on to that.
And with Snorlax in the active, again, this Radiant Greninja cannot manually retreat, but we have the switch card, thankfully. So Blake gets Comfey into the active, another flower selecting. Psychic Energy goes to the discard pile and finds Comfey number 2. Might hold on to the escape rope again, but no, just wants to keep digging. At least get 4, so you open up Cramorant as a threat to just kind of start knocking on the door against the Snorlax.
Yeah, 4 is the magic number, because next turn you use the Colress Experiment along with the Comfey that's in the active. You reach 7, and then you play your 1 switching effect to move into the Dragonite. And your opponent has this turn to bench a Pokemon, or else the game ends.
And hopefully Andrew can meet that threat. There's the pass from Blake. Misfortune Sisters in the active. Radiant Serena is not the Pokemon you really want to establish, but it might be forced. Let's look at the top cards of the deck here.
Ooh, multiple Super Rod. But will we get to a point where that matters, Skarzig? I don't know.
The Super Rods, yeah, are only important if you've had to already use a lot of Radiant Greninja, a lot of Mirage Gates, but I mean, there's 2 Lightning Energy in the discard pile. Is this list on 3? No, it's on 2 Lightning, so we need to find another Rod to get another one in for the Mirage Gate. And now onto Crushing Hammer, fails that.
Well, this is the difference between control of now and control of hold. Snorlax using Gormandize is a lot better than Snorlax passing the turn over and over again. There is no Rotom there, so you're not drawing those additional cards. The hand is not great. The energy, the Crabominal V, and a Sinnoh that isn't going to do anything in this matchup. It's super unfortunate to see a hand like this, and Andrew's just hoping to hold on at this stage.
Seeing a setup like this reminds me of like Arcdura, where you are struggling to complete your setup. You're the control deck. You're just putting a big thing in the active spot that's difficult for your opponent to deal with. But at the same time, your opponent has so much time to put together their strategy. Dig through the deck, get all of these items. There's 2 escape ropes in the hand. Seems like Blake is cruising to an easy victory because of all the switching effects that Lost Box generally runs.
Oh, you love to see that. Manaphy into the lost zone as opposed to the discard pile. It's never going to come back. No Echoing Horn shenanigans, and it's not held in the hand for an Erica's Invitation. It is gone. You do not have to think about Rain Splash ever again, which is pretty good to avoid.
I wonder how many Lost Zone players fell prey to that, certainly, Kyle. Artisan entering play now. Going to finally use it to pick up the Dragonite V. Double checking the energy as well. There's 1 in the hand, but again, we need Lightning Energy to get the rest of this established.
To clarify, Artisan did not find Dragonite. Dragonite was in hand, so Artisan can't find that.
Oh my goodness,
unless it did find
out.
that, and then that wouldn't be allowed. Well, okay.
I saw him tap the Artisan and then put the Dragonite V down.
I think we're okay. It looks like Super Rod
Artisan
is coming down, and the energies will be available for the Mirage Gate.
And now, Energies coming through with the Mirage Gate after the Rod, has the Lightning Energy and the Water Energy. Dragonite set up. This is exactly what we saw in game number 1, Kyle.
It's tough to beat. you need a card like Mimikyu. And where is it? Andrew, I need to see you draw some cards instead of removing cards from your opponent's deck. Wow.
Ooh, escape rope into the Comfey. Very cheeky. Finds a switch cart, though. Has the other escape rope.
Oh, okay. Yeah, does not appreciate that Snorlax and wants to remove that from play right now. So is going to value using that switching card now.
It makes sense to take out the big threat with the double rope, but using 2 switching effects in this matchup just... I guess now that you've got the Dragonite set up, Blake doesn't really care at this point. It's just going to start hitting with the Dragon Gale. Radiant Serena is now stranded in the active. And Artisan now doing a little bit of work for Andrew. Has to find the Mimikyu here. Picks up another Snorlax. I see it in there.
Yeah, I think Artisan may have been a hiccup from Blake. It's not necessary to use that last turn, and it's going to provide Andrew with the basic Pokemon that he's been so desperately looking for. And there is a boss's orders for that Radiant Greninja. There is a switch card in hand as well. So Snorlax is going to continue to stick around.
Andrew's just sticking to his guns with this strategy of having Snorlax in the active and trying to strand one of Blank's Pokemon. There was 2 escape ropes used. Lost Vacuum gets rid of the Artisan.
We learned our lesson.
And Switch Cart once again brings Dragonite back into the active spot to take the knockout on Snorlax. So now Andrew is in a tight spot. I have to find another Snorlax to try to complete my lock once more. Crushing Hammer. Tails.
Yep, that's it. That is all she wrote. 18 minutes is all it took for Blake Wray to dismantle the Snorlax block deck. Kind of how things work at this stage. It's a very innovative deck to bring to this tournament. It lines up so well against so many other decks, but just not Lost Box.
Yeah, the Lost Zone was not a deck that I was expecting to be so popular. You know, like as we looked at the graphic earlier, Kyle, I think that after it won 2 events back-to-back, players had the read that, okay, people are going to anticipate that Lost Box would be countered and then just not bring it instead and switch to something else. But it worked out for Andrew so far, 4-0, and then hit this terrible matchup for the stream. And I think Blake really demonstrated, as long as you understand how to get around your opponent's strategy, what your win condition is, save those switching effects to get around the Snorlax, and Dragonite V was the play.
Yep. I mean, this is going to be pretty straightforward. Dragonite knockout. It's all she wrote. So simple to line up the strategy in this matchup. Andrew tried everything he could, went through that opening hand, but he's just not adding any cards without the use of that Rotom V.
And even if you go for Mimikyu, it needs to be like Mimikyu as the only Pokemon in play, so your opponent can't just rope around it. You're forcing Blake to try to bring out the Cramorant to deal with it.
Right.
And it just gets really muddy from there. There's just too much coverage for too many situations in a Lost Zone deck for a control list that's trying to exploit very specific deck building strategies to function properly.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is around because it has some favorable matchups for sure. It can line up against all sorts of decks. It has some new tools in there that it likes to show off. The Erica's Invitation can be pretty fun. Pull that Pokemon down onto the bench. Then, of course, you can bring it up later on, maybe lock it up for the rest of eternity, as we've seen so often on the far table.